Hello everyone, this is Eagle News. I am Eliza Gonzalez Manglikmot in Washington, D.C. It is Saturday, November 28, 2021, here in the nation's capital. This week's stories. A jury finds 3 white men guilty of murdering Ahmaud Arbery in Georgia.
We, the jury, find the defendant.
Mayan Manzano Guerzon reports about the 5% increase in U.S. prices last month as compared to October 2020. Correspondent-At-Large Thomas Likness tells us how Americans and Canadians are planning their holidays. Plus, a story of world power as a Chinese dad makes medicine to treat his dying son. For Embassy Files, Arlene Ocampo reports about a comics exhibit in D.C. aiming to deepen Spanish presence in the country. For Color My World, Susan Husk reports about the Otsukimi Festival, bringing Japan to North Texas. For this week's Oceania-At-A-Glance, Shane Reyes tells us about a Filipino convenience store in Sydney, Australia. And Ecco Hortaleza Quiñola updates us on the launch of a 10-year National Cultural Policy Workshop in Papua New Guinea. And get ready for this week's Behind the Counter with Aika Era's wonderful recipe for chocolate chip cookie. Our coverage begins now. Another murder case has once again put a spotlight on racial tension in the country. 3 white men have been found guilty of murdering Ahmaud Arbery, an African-American male who was out for a jog in a Georgia neighborhood. Travis McMichael, his father, retired police officer Gregory McMichael, and their neighbor, 52-year-old William Roddy Bryan, have been found guilty by a predominantly white jury in Brunswick, Georgia. The 3 men now face potential life in prison for the February 2020 shooting. During the trial, the defendants said they tried to make a citizen's arrest after suspecting Arbery of burglary. Prosecutors said the trio did not see Arbery commit any crime, but chose to confront him because he was a black man running down the street. A graphic video of the shooting of the unarmed Arbery went viral on social media. The guilty verdicts came just days after the acquittal of Kyle Rittenhouse, a young white man who shot dead 2 men and wounded another during protests and riots against police brutality in Wisconsin last year. Meanwhile, following an accelerated wave of inflation, prices of goods and services in the country have shown a 5% increase last month compared to October of last year. To tell us more, here's Mayan Manzano Guerzon with a report.
Thank you. As the wave of inflation accelerated, prices across the United States rose by 5% last month compared to the same month last year or in 2020. The year-on-year increase, according to the Commerce Department, was the largest since November 1990 and above the 4.4% change reported in September. Incomes last month rose by a more than expected 0.5%, while spending similarly exceeded analysis forecast with a 1.3% gain. The report indicates that Americans continue to shop and see their incomes grow even as inflation rises at record rates, with the data showing energy prices up 30.2% from October 2020, while food prices were 4.8% higher. Americans saw their incomes rise due to increasing wages and gains from assets, indicating as well that increase was undercut by tapering of government benefit payments, likely due to the end of pandemic aid programs. Consumers directed their spending towards both goods and services. Much of the $123.8 billion increase in goods spending went to motor vehicles and parts, while international travel was a component of the $90.5 billion increase in services spending that was felt across sectors. Mayan Manzano Guerzon, Aston, Pennsylvania, Eagle News.
Thanks, Mayan. The holiday season has begun. How are you and your family and friends spending it? For this week's Correspondent-At-Large, Thomas Likness tells us how Americans and Canadians are planning their vacations this time of year. Thomas?
We're in for several weeks of holidays. They actually began this past Thursday as Americans celebrated Thanksgiving and, the parties, the social events and holidays. They'll continue until the new year as various cultures around the world observe one celebration or another. And that raises the question of how people will celebrate this year. The pandemic isn't over yet. Well, the folks at Leger, now that's a major public opinion pollster in North America, the folks at Leger decided to find out how people plan to spend the holidays. Will they social distance? What about the anti-vaxxers? Every family probably has one. Will they be invited to family gatherings? Well, here's what they found. A quarter of Canadians and 30% of Americans who were asked say they are going back to the way things were before the pandemic. And just over a third of Canadians and 26% of Americans say they will celebrate more than they did last year, but not as much as in the pre-COVID days. And about a quarter of both Canadians and Americans, 25%, say they will keep things at the same level as last year. Now, here's where things could get touchy. Would you invite an unvaccinated person into your home, or would you go to a gathering where unvaccinated people would be present? Well, just over a third of Canadians and 54% of Americans say unvaccinated people would be welcome in their homes. And as far as going to a social gathering where unimmunized people are present, about a third of Canadians and 47% of Americans, nearly half, they say, I'm comfortable with that. Doesn't bother me. And as far as attending social gatherings, how are people going to act? You see a bit of a behavior change here from last year. 45% of Canadians and 50% of Americans say they plan to let go of social distancing and greet others with a handshake, a hug, or even a kiss. For me, I'll keep my hermit persona for now. I'm going to limit my socializing. How inspired are you when you face a problem that seems insurmountable? Chu Wei, he lives in China. He wouldn't give up when he couldn't obtain the medication his 2-year-old son needs to treat the symptoms of an incurable genetic disorder. The medicine is not available in China, and because the country has closed its borders, Chu cannot take his son, Ho Yang, to another country for treatment. Although he has no medical training, Chu decided to make the medication himself. Now, a bit of background here. The youngster has Menkes syndrome. That's a genetic disorder that impacts how copper is processed in the body. Why is that important? Well, copper is crucial for brain and nervous system development. And sadly, children who have Menkes syndrome rarely survive beyond the age of 3. Now, Chu has only a high school education, and he ran a small online business before his son became ill. After being told the disease was incurable, he began researching and teaching himself all about pharmaceuticals. Language was a problem. Most online documents on Menkes syndrome were in English, so Chu used translation software to understand them before setting up a home lab in his father's gym. On discovering copper histidine could help, he set up the equipment to manufacture it himself. He mixed copper chloride dihydrate with histidine, sodium hydroxide, and water. He tested it on himself before giving it to his son. 6 weeks after throwing himself into the project, Chu produced his first vial of copper histidine. He now gives Ho Yang a daily dose of the homemade medicine, which gives the child some of the copper that his body is missing. But sadly, the medicine, as we told you, is not a cure. Chu has accepted that it can only slow down the disease. Truly an inspiring story. Until next week, Thomas Likness, Correspondent-At-Large, Eagle News.
Thanks, Thomas. Now, comic illustrators and authors bring to the nation's capital the legacy of Spain's heritage. To tell us about the ongoing exhibit, here's Arlene Ocampo for this week's Embassy Files.
Illustrating Spain in the U.S. is a collaborative project of graphic expressiveness, of comics and their authors. It deepens Spanish presence here in the United States. The project began as a series of comics created by Spanish artists and historians, but now a physical exhibition available now until early March at the former residence of the Ambassadors of Spain here in Washington, D.C. Through comic authors and scholars, the creative dialogue was built using strips to reflect on the legacy of Spain's heritage over the centuries. The comics expounds on several potential sides of Spanish presence, which includes Hispanism, cinema, Spanish scientists, Revolutionary War, immigration, and art. The comics manifest Spain as part of the American reality way before the foundation of the American country. Visit the Spain Embassy website for more about the exhibition. Stay tuned to our next report from the nation's capital. Arlene Ocampo, Embassy Files, Eagle News.
Thanks, Arlene. Fall is here, and so is Japan. For this year's Otsukimi moon watching event, North Texans get to experience everything Japanese. Susan Husk reports for this week's Color My World.
You don't have to get on an airplane to experience Japanese culture, because you can find it right here at the Otsukimi Moon Watching Festival in Frisco, Texas. Otsukimi is a Japanese word for moon watching, tradition in Japan. For the first time since the pandemic, the event was held in person at Simpson Plaza in the heart of Frisco Square, just 30 minutes north of Dallas. Here in the Dallas area, the Otsukimi Moon Watching Festival has grown to become one of the largest Japanese cultural events in North Texas and organized by volunteers from the Japan-American Society of Dallas-Fort Worth in partnership with the Crow Collection of Asian Art.
So this is the Otsukimi Moonwing Festival, and this is a celebration that goes back roughly 1,200 years in Japan. Originally, it was something celebrated by some of the upper class, and it was a way just to celebrate poetry. So that's actually why we have haiku this evening. And we have actually grown our events. It is one of the largest events of its kind in North Texas. We have performances, we have both traditional and contemporary music. We have vendors selling a variety of Japanese items that you can find around Dallas-Fort Worth, but you find them here just in Frisco for this event, this one evening. We have also vendors selling food, we have food trucks, we have even some membership deals for Japan-America Society. So it's really meant to be a festive event in a lot of different ways for people to experience Japan.
My name is Janice. I'm the artist for this booth right here. My artist name is Journey Bunny. I'm actually from Houston, Texas, so we drove up for this festival. It's our first time here. I'm very excited. We've been hearing a lot of anime music, actually. So I'm a big anime fan, and I mostly draw stickers. So I have all of these stickers here. They're waterproof. They're from my most favorite animes.
I am part Japanese and part American. So both of my parents are from both cultures. And so when I get to share this part of Japan, then I'm sharing a part of myself. And I get to also have the pleasure of showing some of the things that people might not know otherwise. And it really shows a lot of the things that we have in a common, which is good food, good friends, and a lot of warmth in between us and a lot of respect of both cultures. And so there's strong points of both American and Japanese culture.
This year's Otsukimi Festival gives North Texas families a taste of Japanese culture. This is Husk, Color My World, Ecco News.
Thanks, Susan. Such a fun event. Now, from a story of bringing Japan to Texas, let's listen to this one of how business owners Marvin and Jinky Aquino bring the Philippines to Sydney in Australia. Shane Reyes reports for Oceania-At-A-Glance.
Sydney is the home to a multitude of people with diverse cultures and ethnic backgrounds, which is celebrated through many different ways. Sydney-siders Marvin and Jinky Aquino have opted to share their insights into their culture through the establishment of their own business, Suki Kart.
Suki Kart is a grocery store that aims to provide the convenience of purchasing authentic Filipino products in Australia. The couple have established this venture to fulfill their dreams of being business owners and while creating exposure for the Filipino community.
So Suki Kart is firstly an online grocery store, Filipino mostly, but we have some Asian products. Then we already ventured and opened one physical store in Hornsby.
Hornsby because it's one of the areas in Sydney that has a lot of Filipinos, but doesn't have any Filipino store yet. And it's an access as well to north area of Sydney, which is Central Coast or Newcastle. So whenever they come to Sydney, Hornsby is their first entrance. So that's a good location for us to open a store.
My experience comes from my parents. They have their own business in the Philippines. So ever since I was young, I was inspired. I know that in the future, I will have my own business.
Because it's pandemic when we started, it's difficult to move around. So we cannot move freely. We cannot talk to the suppliers. So everything has to be through calls or through emails. So that's one of the challenges then. Second one is the availability of the products because not the importation then from Philippines to Australia has been stopped or at least declined significantly. So the products that we can avail from our suppliers here are too limited.
Our main objective in opening Suki Kart is to reach every Filipino in Australia and non-Filipinos alike, and to champion our Filipino products, to introduce them. We started online, now we have one physical store, and we want to open more stores in the future, God willing.
God willing.
Despite the many obstacles that were encountered in starting a new business during the pandemic, Suki Kart has managed to overcome the challenges and turn dreams into reality, while continuing to thrive in this economy. Shane Reyes, Oceania-At-A-Glance, Ecco News.
Thanks, Shane. Meanwhile, in Port Moresby, a new horizon awaits cultural preservation and celebration as the nation launches a 10-year National Cultural Policy Consultation Workshop. What does this mean for Papua New Guinea? Ecco Hortaleza Quiñola reports.
The National Cultural Policy 2022 to 2032 Southern Region Consultation Workshop was launched in Holiday Inn Hotel and was officially opened by the Minister of Tourism, Arts and Culture, Honorable E.C. Henry Leonard.
The National Cultural Policy 2022 to 2032 with a tagline, "We value culture as the source of our identity, strength, guidance, and prosperity." Participants from various regions were there to witness these consultation workshops. National Cultural Commission Executive Director Mr. Stephen Kilanda spearheaded the presentation. According to him, the implementation of the National Cultural Policy 2022 to 2032 will be strategically guided by its successive corporate plans and executed by its annual work plans.
So long we haven't We have not had a policy for the last 37 years. So that's why the culture was not recognized at the national level. And it was not recognized by the stakeholders, by the development partners, because we don't have a document in place. And this is the first time we are trying to get this document out and want to put it in its place. Very important document. So once again, provincial government, thank you. This is your document. You have to implement this policy in the respective provinces.
The minister's vision is to see forms of expression of culture to be taken back and be promoted with the active participations of the local communities and villages.
We're a country that is diverse in terms of cultural tourism. We have a greatest potential in tourism that is based on culture. This policy drive will definitely drive us to attain that potential, to actually cut a piece of the global tourism based on culture. And that we can. This is the reason why this workshop is being held for experts like you to bring in your knowledge and your understanding to create a policy forward for us so that we can participate and we can benefit from the network of tourism based on culture. Papua New Guinea is diverse in terms of culture. One of the last unique countries in the world that has the potential. And we've been dreaming for a long, long time. We haven't seen the potential. We haven't realized the potential. We kept dreaming. Today is the time to wake up. Rise up. Take charge of your culture, your tradition. Create a policy and drive tourism based on culture. Culture belongs to the community. Culture belongs to a provincial government. Culture belongs to the national government. We have to align it and deliver it. This is important. We need to continue on with the narrative, and we need to continue on to promote those events. So the next generation will now know the story and perform.
He also announced that this policy will empower the state's cultural institution and promote excellence with strategic policy directions, regulatory powers, strong leadership, and guidance to provide effective cultural services. He also hopes that the government policies are aligned to develop and safeguard the cultural heritage, assets, and aspirations. As what Minister Isi said, Papua New Guineans owe a collective gratitude and responsibility to their ancestors. They must have to keep, protect, celebrate, and pass on to their children these artistic creations and continue to practice it in this creative industry. Ecco, Hortaleza, Quiñola, Oceania-At-A-Glance, Eagle News.
Thank you, Ecco. Now put on your aprons and let's get to work. Here's Aika Era's recipe for a classic chocolate chip cookie for this week's Behind the Counter.
Hey, I'm Aika, and welcome back to Behind the Counter, where we see easy meals be brought to life. This week, we're joined by one of our youngest chefs to show us how to make one of the most popular baked desserts, the chocolate chip cookie. Every baker has their own way of making it, but let's see how Jonas puts his spin on this classic.
Hi, I'm Jonas, and today we're gonna make cookies. 2 cups of flour. Baking soda. Half a teaspoon salt. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Let's set it aside. But I just dumped the whole one. Half cup sugar. One cup of brown sugar. Little small brown sugar. missing. Oh no, they're eggs. Oh no, they're getting squished and stinking. Next, we mix in the flour. Have some more flour. Oh, Mommy, I can't see the butter again. Put all in the flour. Dump it all in. Mix all the chocolate chips. Add some more chocolate chips. And placing it. Heat oven at 375. I ate it. Wash my hands. Making it a ball. The cookies are all done. Yummy. Let's take a bite. Yummy.
Great job, Jonas! These look delicious, but unfortunately, all good things must come to an end. So, for all of you watching, it's your turn to put your spin on the chocolate chip cookie. Check back here for full recipes, and if there's a dish that you'd like to see, let us know in the comments below. Catch us on eaglenews.net, on our Eagle News YouTube channel, and on our Eagle News Facebook page. Check back next week when we go behind the counter.
Thank you all for watching. Follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter at Eagle News Live. I am Eliza Gonzalez Manglikmot. Enjoy your weekend, everyone.